Okay, so my intelligent self just realized I could probably move my phone so it was flip the screen. I don't know. I'm technologically deficient, so this video's ridiculous. But anyway, I waited a little while after I added my starter flour and water, and so now my dough is still a little bit shaggy, but the flour has absorbed a little bit more. So now I'm going to add my 10 grams of salt, which I measured out into a little cup. I like to measure the salt out because I don't want to over pour my salt into my dough because it's a lot harder to get out. Flour you can kind of grab out a little bit. Water you can pour out, but the salt's a little bit, you don't want to add too much because it would suck. So what I do with this is I like to take a little bit of olive oil, and I don't know if it actually does anything, but I feel like it does. And I just pour a little bit on my hands and like so that they're a little bit slippery. I feel like it makes the dough more manageable. Again, I don't know if that's true. And I pour about half of the salt just on top. So just sitting on top. And then I go in and I do just like this kind of fold and pinch motion and like just kind of like really mix that salt in. And as you can see, like the dough is already like a lot smoother. So just kind of like pulling it like up and like kind of like crab pinching it a little bit to kind of mix all that salt in. And you might feel like kind of some clumps of flour too, like if you didn't get them all mixed in. I usually have like a couple, and you can kind of break those up like doing a little pinch. And then I add the rest of my salt in, and then I put a little bit more oil on my hands. It also helps the dough from sticking to your hands too, which is nice. Later when I do my stretch and folds, I'll just use some water. But this just, I feel like I said, just kind of like softens the dough a little bit. If you make a sandwich bread, you would add olive oil. So I guess that it probably does have like some effect, but it's so, like I'm adding so little, I'm not really, maybe it's just me feeling like it actually does something. So that's all pretty mixed in. So don't have any like chunks of flour. And then what I do, like I said before, is I just take like this scraper and I like to just scrape down the edges just to keep it tidy. It's not necessary at all. It's just, I think it looks better, and then you don't have any like kind of crusty chunks like getting into your dough. And then I cover with a plastic bag just because I have them. Some people use a towel. I feel like sometimes towels let the top of the dough dry out. Some people use a shower cap. Totally up to you. I just feel like this is easier. Some people are like, ew, that's gross. Like a dirty shopping bag. But I'm like, it's like, I know, just at the grocery store, it's not, it's probably fine. It's going to get baked. So, yeah. And then that's the next step. And then, so we'll let that sit for about a half hour. And then we're going to come back and I'll show you how to do a stretch and fold. But meanwhile, when I just realized I have my phone sitting on my starter, to feed your starter, like I said, before, I think in my earlier video, I have about 20 grams in here. So I'm going to go ahead and add 20 grams of flour and 20 grams of water. And actually, I like to do a little bit higher feed. I like to feed, some people like to do like a 1-to-1 ratio. So if it was 20 grams of starter, you'd add 20 grams of water, 20 grams flour. I like to do like a 1-to-2. So like 20 grams of starter and 40 grams of water and flour. Just so I don't know, maybe that's why mine takes a little bit longer to rise because it's like eating more. I just feel like it gives you like a more robust starter. Again, like it might just be my imagination. So, but I add the water in and then I grab just a fork again and kind of like where I had so little in the jar, just kind of like mix it up really good. And again, this kind of keeps it from me getting a lot, having a lot of discard to get rid of, which is, you know, some people like to use it in recipes, but you don't want to end up with a lot. You don't want to end up like continually feeding like tons of flour and wasting like all that money and stuff, I guess, you know, feeding. Because if you like, if I didn't use this up and had the 40 grams of flour, the 40 grams of water at 80, and then the 20 grams of starter. So now I have in this jar 100 grams of starter, which I should probably add a little bit more flour and water just so that the next time I bake, I'll have a little bit extra. It's really not like, it doesn't have to be super exact. Like I just went up to 60, so I'll add 10 more or so of water. So anyway, like I said, it doesn't have to be super exact. You want to make sure that you're not underfeeding. And this can go in the fridge if you didn't plan to bake. If you plan to bake the next day, you can leave it out on your counter. You can also, like I said, you can discard down to like a very small amount. And like if I knew I wasn't going to bake for a couple days, I could have just fed like with the 20 grams, like the 20 grams water, 20 grams flour, and then that would build me back up slowly to a good amount. I always take my little spatula and just go around the edges too, and just get it nice and cleaned up from where I was pouring. That way it's all tidy. So ta-da! And now you can see it's about right where it was, where my rubber band was before. So I don't even have to move it. And then I just set this on my counter. I bake so often that I don't have to bother about putting it in the fridge. But and my house is cold, so I wrap it in a towel. You probably don't have to worry about that, but I'll wrap like a dish towel just around it just to keep it a little bit warmer. But yeah, that's that. So I'll come back and show you stretch and folds in just a minute. Okay, so I let the dough sit for about, I think I gave it about a half hour. It might have been a little bit less. But you can see it's starting to get like a little smoother looking on the surface. It's not quite so shaggy anymore. Kind of like getting some, sorry, you can see that, like some webbing as it pulls away from the side, which is what we want to look for. So the next step is to give the dough some structure so that it will hold its shape better when you're baking it. So I wet my hands in some water. I just have like a little bowl of water. So my hands are moist, and that'll keep the dough from sticking to your hands. Everyone always like the idea of thinking like, oh, I put flour on my hands. Flour, especially all-purpose flour, actually creates gluten, so it makes like your dough stickier after you're working with it. So wet your hands, and then you're just going to kind of reach into the bowl and grab a side of it, and we're just going to pull it up a little bit, like, you know, like halfway, and then you're going to fold it over. So just lift and fold, and then you turn your bowl, and I'm going to do the same thing over again. So I'm going to get my hands wet again, and I have this. I'm going to grab this side now. So I folded from here to here, and now I'm going to fold from the bottom, I guess you could say, up to the, again, stretching it kind of as far as it will go and laying it down across So now I've done 2 folds, one across, one top to bottom. And now I'm going to go to the other side and I'm going to pull. And so now you can see like the dough, it won't want to stretch as much because you are starting to build up that structure. So it will get a little bit harder to stretch as you go through those stretch and folds. So, and if you feel any like chunks of dough, you can kind of work those out too. Some every now and then I can feel like a crumb and I'm like, I don't want that. I want your dough to be nice and smooth. And then you can wet your hands again. And again, last one, going from the top of the bowl and folding it down. And sometimes I'll go back around and what I usually do is I just turn the bowl so that you're not like, oh, which side am I on? Just always turn the bowl like a quarter of a turn so that you're always going from the top. And I usually I try to do one more at the end. And as you can see, like now it doesn't even like want to stretch. You don't want it to tear, but it doesn't really want to stretch. So I'll just fold it over and then I get my hands a little bit wet again. And what I like to do is what would be a coil fold, where you like lift all of the dough up out of the bowl and kind of let it fold underneath of itself. So again, not necessary. I just feel like it makes it, kind of gives it a nice round shape already, like muscle memory or something. And then you're done. So now I have my dough just resting in the bowl. If you have a lot on the edge, you can scrape it down again, but I don't usually have to worry too much about it. So in the instructions, you're going to do that 3 times. So that was number 1. So the stretch and folds, it's 4 stretches is 1 stretch and fold and 1 set anyway. And so you're going to do that 3 times. So that was 1. We'll wait another half hour. We'll do that again. And we'll do another half hour and we'll do it 1 more time. I won't show you those, obviously. All right.